What's a subtle sign someone has been through some shit? Never asking for anything, even the bare minimum. Apologizing for things that aren't their fault even in the slightest. Never talking about their issues seriously, probably joking about it or even staying away from the topic completely. Flinching at small things. Edit, thanks for the awards and upvotes, they're greatly appreciated. Just wanted to clear some things up. Of course, some people will do these things even without having been through shit. These are just common in a lot of people who have, myself included. Being called an old soul when I was a kid/teen/early adult years. Fuck, I still hear it at 26, though I believe it's in part due to me still looking young. Didn't realize until a few years ago that I'm not an old soul, I just had to grow up way too young. I definitely don't take it as the compliment I used to. Observant. Extremely observant. So observant to the point that they can point out things about other people that are more than likely true without knowing the person at all. Remembering small details, noticing things you wouldn't have even thought to notice, but they did. Pay attention to the way someone reacts when you raise your voice slightly. Do they tense up? Do they stop what they are doing? Do they instantly look down? Do you catch them observing you? The way they react can tell a lot about the type of shit they've been through. I know a guy who was a former Navy corpsman, basically a combat medic that deploys with the USMC. He did it for 16 years, and during one of his many tours he was shot in the hand, lost his pinky finger, and got shot half a dozen times in the back, some in the arm or some in the flesh, as he fell, all while carrying a critically wounded Marine on his shoulder who wouldn't make it. He was one of the most chilled, relaxed, kind person I've ever met. In fact, if you could physically see some of his injuries, his hand, you wouldn't believe that he had been through. If anyone had a right to be a rude, bitter, angry person, it would probably be him. But he wasn't. He was just happy to be alive. They always lock their doors. Prefer sleeping in corners, facing said door. Have some kind of escape tool always on the ready, for example a packed bag with essentials like money, important documents, and clothes for 1 to 3 days. Some prefer sleeping in reach of their car keys or weapons. They have light sleep in general and are extremely sensitive to sound when not anticipated. They are more stressed when in need of help from others. They get anxiety from change even if they are open-minded. If it affects their social circle or their home, job, etc. Most kids grow up extremely fast depending on the situation. Source: lack of reaction to awful things. I was recently listening to a program on NPR, and on it was a man who had grown up in Sri Lanka during some of the worst parts of the war there. Because of the way he grew up, his perception of horrific events was incredibly skewed, and when something like September 11th happened, he was much less emotionally affected than many people were. Powerfully integrated individuals keep moving forward, at all costs. Not only because they love, not because they've had nothing but success all their life, but because they have suffered. They know what's chasing them, they know where they will end up if they allow their temptations to drag them downward. Suffering pushes you to choose. Choosing allows you to bargain with the future. This is why the central tenet of Buddhism is that life is suffering. Suffering is a source to spiritual awakening, but also a temptation for destruction. Faith is fundamentally the courage to keep aiming up despite all evidence against that. This has been the first minute of the rest of your life. For me, I have a near constant feeling of guilt over everything, almost like I feel guilty for existing. So I never ask for anything or help, and if someone does something for me I'm overly grateful. I have a constant need to be useful, like if my partner is doing the dishes or cooking, I'll stand in the kitchen with him, because if I sit on the couch, I feel overwhelmingly guilty. I also have a tendency to only, surface level, talk about my feelings or bad things going on, which often frustrates my friends as they feel like I can't trust them. I'm terrified of being a burden. Shutting down when someone gets angry around me, if another me, even if the anger isn't directed at me. It really depends on how they handled said shit. If they handled it well, then they are usually even-keeled and calm in the face of problems. They know how to mobilize effectively and where the right resources are and when to utilize them. They don't overreact and don't underreact. If they didn't handle the shit well, then they automatically just have a hairline trigger to fly off the handle. I am a doctor and work with a lot of old experienced doctors. The ones who were trained well and handled emergencies in the past have a very distinctive way of dealing with things when they come up. The other kind of older doctors are the ones that have seen some shit and it all blew up in their face. And they basically react to things the same way a new doctor would.